Hi everyone, this is Mr. Gunnell. I'm a science teacher at the high school, and the point of this video is to give you a quick overview of some of the Zoom features that will be useful as we get started this school year. You'll see on the left of my screen I have an agenda so you can see in the video what's being covered in which order, so if you feel really comfortable with something at the beginning, feel free to skip ahead. Now, when you join a Zoom session, you can either join by a link that your teacher will give you, or you can start right from the app that should be on your device. And when you join a meeting, go ahead and start here. Now I've already entered the meeting ID for the personal room that I've set up, and this is really most likely what's going to happen with most of your classes this year is your teacher will set up their sessions through a personal meeting room. Their number will most likely stay the same the entire time, and you can always enter with that same meeting number for each teacher. And so I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. My name's already typed in, and I'll join. Now this meeting room has a password which I'll type in, and I'll still have to wait until the host lets me in. So I'll go ahead on my other device and let myself in. Usually have to choose to enter with your computer's audio. And what I have is that as I'm entering this meeting, I usually have my microphone and my camera turned off. And so if I want to be able to talk or let anybody see me, I'll have to turn those on. Now I like to also set up gallery view unless someone's presenting so that you can see me and you can see everybody else. Now I can also stop my video or mute myself, but let's get back over to our agenda here. So we've already entered the meeting. Now let's look at some audio settings. I can either mute or unmute myself just by pressing the button. Now there are also shortcuts, and you can see if you hover your mouse over those, that if I hold down for a PC or a Mac, you'll see the shortcut there. And for the Mac, the shortcut is Command-Shift-A for audio. And what that's going to do is going to mute myself, or I can unmute myself by pressing the same thing. Now the other thing you could do is if you're already muted, which I would actually suggest for any meeting, is to just leave yourself muted. And then anytime you want to talk, you just hold down the space bar. And so it's really kind of like a push to talk or a walkie-talkie that while you're holding the space bar, and I'm still holding it right now, I'm unmuted. But as soon as I let go, it'll go back to being muted. Now there are some people that have some sound issues, and one way to troubleshoot that, like if you think that you're unmuted, the other person's unmuted, and you still can't quite hear something, a lot of times what happens is just the wrong speaker is connected. So the up arrow right next to unmute, if you press that, you're going to see that there's quite a few different options. And so if you think that the sound should be coming through, maybe it's on the wrong speaker. So this is one of the speakers that I have. I could also have it go through my AirPods. I might just have headphones connected to the computer and I'm not actually listening to them, so it might be going to the wrong place. So if you can't hear something and you should be, you might just have to check and see where the audio is going to. So either through your speaker, or it could be the same issue for a microphone. You might have the wrong microphone selected. And so that's one of the ways to troubleshoot that if you feel like you should be hearing sound but you're not. Now there are some similar settings for the video, and again we already talked about starting and stopping your video, but let's look at some of the other settings. I can click the up arrow and go to video settings. When you're here, you can turn on or off HD video. So if you're having some internet issues, you might want to turn off HD, and you can get a standard definition video, and that might actually make it a little bit easier or better if you're having some buffering problems to actually get good, clean video that's not actually taking too much of your bandwidth. So you might need to turn that on or off if you are having connection problems. You can also mirror your video, which will just flip your picture left and right. That's not really so useful unless you just find it weird that the way your video is showing. There's also touch up my appearance. If you feel like you want to look really nice in your video, you can touch up. It just makes it a little bit of a softer picture. So that's more of a fun setting. And there's also virtual background, which you can access while you're in your settings. You can click here. Or another way to get that is just directly from the up arrow, you can go to choose virtual background. And if you don't want to see my vacuum cleaner back there, or I don't want you to see my vacuum cleaner, I can choose one of these backgrounds. Or since I'm a science teacher, let's say I don't want to choose one of these, I can add another background, an image on my computer, and let's say I want to just be in front of Jupiter. So I can have a nice picture of Jupiter behind me. Same thing here, you can mirror your video from this location too. And so you can also go back to none, and then we can see my vacuum cleaner again. or maybe the cat that's back there. So that's how you change your virtual background. There's also some screen sharing options. Now, when I enter full screen, or when I try to screen share, a lot of times this will come up because your teacher has not enabled you to screen share. So they have to set it up from their end that you are allowed to screen share. And so I'll go ahead and do that. And so once they've allowed you to screen share, you can go ahead and show your teacher something that you might need to. So either your desktop, or you can also share from an iPhone or an iPad, or some other thing that you have open on your computer. You can play around with those settings on your own if you'd like to. I'm not going to really go through them in this video, and I should actually not share. So that's screen sharing, and some of the alternate screen sharing options. You could play around with those if you'd like to, but let's jump ahead to the participant window. This is something that I'll actually usually turn on right as soon as I start Zoom because I just find it so useful. So if I turn on the participants window, let me resize this so we can see everything, is that I can just see the two people that are in the room. It's myself and the other myself because I'm controlling the meeting from another computer. And you also get the options we talked about before. You can unmute yourself here. There's also the chat window, which I usually turn on at the same time right as soon as I enter a meeting, just because it's nice to have this stuff going on over here. And while we're looking at those, I'm also going to talk about nonverbal feedback. So in the participants window, along the bottom, you have all these nonverbal feedback options, or sometimes you can look for some more options. So there's a coffee cup, I need a break, I'm away from my computer, I think something really good happens, I'm going to clap for it. Or your teacher might just ask you to respond to a yes or no question, or you might have a question you want to raise your hand. And those will show up here. Now these won't go away unless you click them again to turn them off. The other thing that could happen is you could have your teacher just turn all of the reactions off. And I should be careful about calling those reactions because, again, these are nonverbal feedbacks. And when we say reactions, really reactions in Zoom is down here. And those reactions are like a clap or a thumbs up. And so that'll show up on your screen in your picture, and that'll disappear after a few seconds. So these are temporary, whereas the nonverbal reactions will stay on, like this hand, until you turn it off yourself or the teacher turns it off for you. And so that's the difference between feedback, which is in the participant window, or reactions, which are temporary, and those show up on your screen. And then the only other thing about the chat window is just be careful about who you're messaging. You can either be messaging everyone, which is the default, or you can just message the host. So if you just want to message your teacher directly, you could choose that. And depending on the settings of the different Zooms, some teachers will allow you to message to other students in the class. It depends on whether that's set up or not. So just always be careful about who you're messaging and whether you're messaging everyone or not. So that's a quick overview of some of the key features that we've noticed about Zoom that are pretty useful, and again, some of the troubleshooting things you should watch out for. So the mute features, the video features, and specifically some of those audio problems that a lot of students have had. So I hope that's helpful. We look forward to seeing you in a few days here, and the last thing you'll do in a meeting is go ahead and leave the meeting, and thanks for watching.